So in my previous life, I was a labor and postpartum doula. I'm thinking back now to about almost 14 years ago, where I had a client who was having a hospital birth. Her pregnancy was very, very normal. No complications throughout the pregnancy at all. She was a really petite person, 5 feet tall, very slender, and her belly was absolutely enormous. I could see her belly coming around a corner for quite a while before she actually appeared. She was pretty big. In the hospital, in terms of support people, she had, which was all a part of the original plan, and everything actually went according to plan in terms of who was supposed to be there, and the type of care she was supposed to receive from us. So I was there as her doula. Her cousin was also there, and her husband was there as well. Early labor and active labor progressed fairly normally for a first baby. She had been laboring from first contractions to birth of baby probably about 20 hours, if I remember correctly. Like I said, the early labor and active labor went fairly smoothly. When it came to pushing, not that it didn't go smoothly, but she had a pretty tough time pushing this baby out. Her hips weren't necessarily incredibly narrow, but again, she was a small person with a large baby for her body. So the pushing period probably took between 2 to 3 hours, which isn't incredibly abnormal for a first-time birth. But she was having a pretty hard time pushing this baby out and was completely exhausted. This was obviously something she didn't anticipate. She didn't think that she was going to take this long. I know I myself personally, with my 3 vaginal births that I had, I pushed the babies out in no less than 10 minutes, or no more than 10 minutes, I should say. 2-3 pushes and my babies were out. So this was a little different, and it took her a while. We were taking turns helping her with 2 people, one person standing on one side of the bed, the other person standing on the other side of the bed, and she would place her foot on our chest, sort of shoulder chest area, and we had to really brace our bodies. Like, we had a workout that day, and hold our bodies while she pushed against us so she could use that force to try and push the baby out. And that was obviously after about an hour of pushing. She really needed that help. I left that birth black and blue on both of my shoulders here because of the excessive force and the lengthy amount of time that it took for her to actually push the baby out. So the baby was not that huge. He was about 8 pounds, 6 ounces, but for her, he was a pretty big baby. She did also have an epidural for her birth, which she probably got at around 7 centimeters of dilation, somewhere around there. But what the real issue was that after the effects of the epidural wore out, she still wasn't able to walk. She was numb. She couldn't feel her leg. She was weak in one leg and she could not walk with one of those legs, completely numb. And so it was, if I remember correctly, she did have some nerve damage. I'm not sure if it was because of pushing, which it probably was, or if it was because of the epidural, which is a much rarer thing to happen. Now, nerve damage isn't necessarily a common thing with women in labor, but it does happen to about 1% of women where they have some sort of nerve damage. And normally it does take care of itself if it goes away and repairs itself within the first few weeks after birth. And in very rare, very, very rare instances, it doesn't correct itself at all and is sort of a permanent state. But in her case, it did take a few weeks before she was able to have full use of her legs again. So it was a little bit trying for her, because obviously that's not something you can anticipate, not really a part of the original plan, that you're going to be laid up for a few weeks with people having to help you bring the baby to you and things like that. She was able to walk a bit after the first few days, but she did not have full range of motion or full feeling of her legs within those first few days. It did take a couple weeks for her to get better and fully use her legs. That was the only time that I've ever experienced something like that in a birth. I've never had a client who's had nerve damage before, and that was the only one. So that sort of goes to show how rare that actually is. But you know, that sort of thing that happens can cause depression, not just the baby blues, but some postpartum depression to set in, because the reality versus the expected outcome did not match for her, and she was a bit depressed. Her husband was at work, so I was with her quite a bit during those first few weeks, assisting her, helping her take care of the baby, helping take care of her, because a lot of people think that, you know, you have a baby, you have to look after the baby, but the mom needs to be taken care of as well. So there was a lot of care going on for both of them in those first couple weeks, but thankfully everything worked out. Baby was healthy, she recovered, and all was well.